And welcome back to the Movie Pope podcast. And today is an interview episode. Today we have Dara Sanders with the Alexandria Film Festival joining us. And we're going to dig a little deep into how the festival started, what it does, and what the film scene is like in Northern Virginia and the DC area. Dara, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. Well, I want to thank you for actually taking a chance with us, just because this is a podcast that is fairly new, and the interview segment is actually more newer than the podcast itself. So
Okay.
I just want to thank you so much for taking the chance with us. So I just want to start out. Why don't you just go ahead and introduce yourself? Let us know who you are, how you got started in this industry, and what drives your passion.
Yeah, so I've always had a passion for movies, just a casual interest, not really someone that paid attention to the specifics about techniques directors use and devices that they use. I started out just like as a casual film watcher, but I took a movie class in college. It was actually very, very interesting. With actually a couple friends of mine. And so we really got into it. It was actually a film class where we studied Terrence Malick, Stanley Kubrick, Alfred Hitchcock, and Orson Welles.
Okay. So was it like a general film class, general history of film, or was it more focused on different filmmakers and their styles?
The filmmakers and their styles, right?
Okay.
And so and so that was like my introduction to, for example, Stanley Kubrick's The Killing, right? That was the first time where you saw like the point of view filmmaking style all around this robbery, right? That so many directors have since taken from, right? That you see it all the time now, but that was the first time it was on film.
Right.
And certain techniques filmmakers use, like to make the character bigger, where they'll have back in the 50s, they might not have had, they didn't have the drone thing, so they used the crane, right? And Shadow of a Doubt, right? And the uncle is exposed and he seems bigger and like a monster, and you're like, oh wow, that's kind of cool, right? And so different things like, montages, learning about how the editing is done. Is it tight editing? The use of a score. I have to say, that was I had been introduced to, I think, the only one at the time I was introduced to in terms of having watched their films, probably Alfred Hitchcock. And so Terrence Malick, of course, completely new to me. I mean, he only has 4 films, I think. So, someone like him, his style is so unique, right? And so that was just fascinating to learn about, and some of the techniques he uses. So I think, it was just kind of groundbreaking directors in some sense, and how they laid a foundation, right, for films that you see in the present day. So right. I think that kind of helped me understand films I saw from that point on, I think, and that's very cool, right? And then you can start appreciating more about what the directors do and how they do it, right? Directors that they're the directors that kind of beat you over the head with metaphors, and they treat the audience member like they're 10, right? There's no nuance, and then there are the other directors where you're just like, what am I watching here? I mean, you really this is too much, and so I think that, finding a director, if you might, that has that nice balance in terms of technique and how the story is told, it's something I'm able to appreciate more.
So does that inform your approach when you're looking at films to consider for the film festival? Is that?
Well, here's the thing, right? We're talking a different level. Just let's be honest here. We're talking, the Alexandria Film Festival, just to give you some background, was started 17 years ago. At the time, it was run by the city. And so the city provided the locale. And I think at the time, now mind you, I was at that time, I think I was in college when it started. At that time, it was in one location. There was a theater that's now defunct or has turned into like a retail store that they held all the films in. And so it was completely funded by the city. And the city was the one that threw all the backing behind it.
Right.
And then they separated from the city, I think about 6 or 7 years later. I myself didn't kind of join up until what? The ninth, let me see, we're 17, the ninth year of the festival.
Okay.
And so, right. And so I think one of the things that's unique about us, obviously, you know, obviously ahead of time, we're not AFI Sundance level, right? Or TIFF or any of those festivals. We also don't have paid staff, right? So we're all volunteer. And whenever you have like a all volunteer film festival like this, you're going to have attrition, right? And so depending on what people have going on, sometimes they can volunteer, sometimes they can't. And so I think for us, it's all about like, you know, how do we get things, what we want to get done? Do we have the manpower that year? And, you know, are we able to, you know, solicit colleges, universities, high schools to kind of fill in the gaps? But, you know, that's something just overall as a festival, we kind of struggle with. In order to grow, you know, to grow, right? And so that, you know, feeds into, I think, the awareness part about it, right? In terms of the outreach, what you know, manpower, outreach, what we're able to do. And so that, I think, also affects the films we get, right? And so, you know, we have a decent reputation, right? If you go in Film Freeway, like everyone that comes, all the filmmakers, we treat them well. We're usually able to put them up in a hotel. We have a filmmaker reception. We have an award ceremony, you know, things like that. You know, we're able to treat them well, and we always get really good feedback, but we're still small scale. And that's, you know, sometimes it's, you know, some festivals, you know, they might start off within their third year, they're able to get like AT&T as a sponsor. And if you can do that, you can do a whole lot, right? You can screen different places. So I think for us, you know, we have a good reputation, but it's not a renowned reputation. So the type of films we see, it really like it's all over the place, to be honest. You know, we get a lot of up and coming, so to speak, right? We get local, we get a lot of international, surprisingly, international filmmakers.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, definitely.
So let me ask you this. So when we're talking about international, I mean, would you say that a lot of them are coming from like from South America or Africa or Asia or Europe? Like,
Europe.
we're talking here. Okay.
Europe, yeah, definitely Europe, India, South America, not as much. I got to be honest. It's interesting you mentioned that first, but definitely Europe.
Okay.
You know, France, Germany. We usually get 3 to 5 Russian films a year. I think Asian, definitely Asian, Asian countries, Southeast Asian countries, I would say. That not
okay.
No,
So what?
I wouldn't say Japan. No, Japan, Korea, no. Maybe Korea, Japan, no. China, no. Southeast Asia, yeah.
Well, we'll see. We'll see. That's fascinating because from what you've been telling me about the Alexandria Film Festival, that's actually pretty remarkable that you have such a huge international reach. How? I mean, do you think maybe you can talk about how you're able to reach reach out to all those different countries to get all these people interested in submitting their film to you?
Well, I think I have a theory, and that has to do with, first of all, we do our rate structure for submission is on the lower end. We don't we don't, charge you $150 to submit your film, right? And I know filmmakers, because they've told us this when they ask for waivers, a lot of times they'll say, look, we have this, I guess most filmmakers generally, they'll have like a budget. Okay.
Right.
And then they'll say, what film festivals are we going to submit to? And, because I've done judging for AFI, I have no doubt that, this is something I would do. I would say, go for the big fish, right? And then kind of look around and see what else, right? So if you have a Film Freeway account, you might look and see, okay, what else is out there? How much would it cost me? Could I get visibility, right? Well, we offer screening. We don't screen it at a community center. We screen it at a theater. And a lot of filmmakers, tell me that all festivals don't do that. They're not all screening in a theater. And if you're a filmmaker, that's where you want to see your film.
Right.
I assume it has more to do with what we can offer a filmmaker. And so, the filmmaker looking at a budget has a budget and says, looking through who to apply to, I think we're a pretty good option, but, obviously on a smaller scale. But,
Gotcha.
and it's actually very cool because, a lot of times they'll come to, to see their film. And it's really cool to have people coming from overseas, it makes
Yeah.
yeah, oh yeah, it's so cool. But we also like when we have the local folks too. I don't want to, hype up the foreign filmmakers that much. I think that, it's very cool when you have local talent, right? And they can bring their families, and it's really something that they can really share with their friends and family, right? Like, I made a film and they accepted it, and it's down the street and everybody has to come. And that's always really cool to see.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. So this actually leads into my next question. So what is the film scene like in Northern Virginia and the DC area?
It's not as, I would say, like, I remember, because what we've done in the past is try to partner with other film festivals or reach out to them, sometimes just like for advice, things like that, right? So I would say, like, if I'm looking at the DC scene and I'm ranking, right? Let's say, I'm not going to go through 1 through 5, but I would say number 1 is DC Shorts, right? DC Shorts gets, celebrities to come. These are obviously all shorts. So that to me is like a cool angle, I think. Everybody kind of likes shorts, right? You're not going to be in there for 2 hours. And they're, some of them are really interesting and you can see a lot, so you get value, but they have a lot of money, and so they have offices, they have paid staff.
Right.
And so I would rank them, towards the top. And then you have just a bunch of smaller scale festivals. You have like, there's one in Reston, it's called like Washington West. They have a ton of money. And so they're able to do a lot, but they are smaller scale, but they can get, celebrities to come. And so they're kind of on a different level, even though I think they're like 4 years old.
Right.
A few festivals that I was aware of, like Rosebud Festival, I think that was in Arlington, is defunct now. And
okay.
So, yeah, and so it just kind of depends. Like there was one in they used to screen in Fairfax, Virginia. They're pretty new as well, and we've partnered with them in the past. I can't think of their name, but some of the other ones that you have are more niche festivals in that it's kind of limited in what types of films they'll screen.
So like horror films or LGBTQ, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and there's actually one, and I actually don't know if it's still around, but when I looked it up, I was like, well, that's kind of cool. But it's only films that were shot on your phone.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, things like that. Yeah. So it's not happening, so to speak. It's not It's not that vibrant, I would say. But it's we have a little bit. We have something. And a lot of them, like I said, like they're newer and they kind of come with a flurry kind of in, and sometimes they last, sometimes they don't. But it all depends on what you can do to sustain yourself, right? In terms of the money and volunteers and the films you show and getting a reputation, I think.
I totally understand that. I mean, so when I was looking up film festivals to see if they would come on to the podcast, I noticed that a lot of them were in, well, especially in Virginia. I noticed a lot of them were like in the Chesapeake, Central Virginia area. But then when I looked at the Northern Virginia area, it was probably like 6 or 7. So it was pretty paltry compared to the rest of the state.
Yeah.
And what I found, what I found interesting was, was the fact that DC obviously is a huge media city, not only because of all these news outlets from around the world, but
Right.
I mean, there are a lot of shows and TV, movies and TV shows that are, filmed over there.
Well, usually Baltimore. So like sometimes, well, no films. Yeah, I would say films more so than TV shows. Definitely
Okay.
more than TV shows. That's true. Yes.
Okay.
But you're right, because you have the Middleburg Festival, right? Charlottesville has a festival. That's pretty prominent. I guess what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Like something that's prominent. Yeah, I totally agree. You're exactly right. It's very interesting.
So the thing that I find interesting is, in spite of the fact there are like maybe a handful of film festivals in the Northern Virginia, DC area, in my mind, I'm thinking, well, just because there aren't that many film festivals, that doesn't mean there isn't that much talent. Is that a fair thing to say?
I think it is. And what's interesting, like, like I told you, they're niche film festivals, like the I don't know if you're familiar, if you saw it, there's the Environmental Film Festival, right?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
Right. And so you have, because DC is known for government and then, the lobbying, right? So you have nonprofits, right? You have a ton of nonprofits covering like a vast array of causes. So, you have that. So it kind of makes sense that you would have more niche film festivals. I would say, at least in DC, there's like the press. There's some film festival that's like press focused, journalism focused film festival, right? And so that kind of, something like that kind of fits with DC more so. I don't know that I would say the media is, vibrant. Maybe there's are you familiar with the 48-hour project?
Yeah, I'm here in Charlotte, so I know that that's a thing.
Yeah.
I would say it's a fairly new phenomenon. It only came out maybe 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, and we heard, we started getting films from that project. And we had a volunteer a few years ago, maybe 5 years ago, I think, now that I think about it, who was heavily involved with it, and they would have events. And so they're, I think, very good about, helping kind of filmmakers. And the fact that they do have they have one in Alexandria, one in DC. The fact that they have 2 locations in the area does say something about the talent that is here, I think. Yeah. But, it's still a very small community. And one of the things we want to do once we get the bandwidth is start cultivating that. Because there's a lot you can kind of do to help the next generation of filmmaker, right? You can sponsor screenwriting classes, right? You can have a contest for the best screenplay. There are different things you can do. You can do panels, right? There are a lot of things you can do, as a festival, that the larger ones are doing that we just haven't been able to, because we just don't have the bandwidth to get it done. Right. But it's something, when we talk about things that we'd like to do, like when we do like our strategy sessions, stuff like that is something that we're interested in. But stuff like that takes time, and then how do you organize it. There's a lot involved in it, and you probably need someone to kind of focus most of their attention on it. And
Right.
so, yeah. And so, like, just based on just over the years, the local films that we've gotten that were good, meaning we accepted them, I would say there's a decent filmmaking community in the area.
Right. But it could, but you would like to cultivate it and have it grow into something that's more sustainable. Right.
Right. And where we have a connection, a connection with them that becomes more of a partnership and not
Hmm.
a, once a year thing.
So I want to backtrack a little bit here because because you actually did answer a question I was going to pose about cultivating talent. What would need to happen in order for you to get to that next level where you're creating resources or you're creating more opportunities for these filmmakers?
Well, I think that one of the first things I would think about, and I'm not going to drop names or whatever, but there are a few filmmakers that are consistent, have a consistent association with the festival, right? They always, if not every year, every other year or 2 straight years break, whatever, that always submit their film to our festival, and we have great relationships with them that are in Arlington or in Alexandria, right? Like, oh, so and so has a new film out. Oh, great. Well, we know we're going to screen it. We know it's going to be good. And so I think you start there, right? Because to me, they're the more prominent ones, right? And so I think you start there and you kind of go out from there. Like, this is our idea. What do you think? I think you kind of start with like a board and you start discussing it kind of in that way. And then you start kind of tasking or brainstorming, I should say, ideas, bouncing them off them. Because I don't know that, we could come up with our own ideas, but I think filmmakers have a better point of view. And they also kind of know, hey, I kind of struggled to kind of make it in the business, and I wish I had this, and it'd be really good if you guys could do this, right? And so I think it kind of starts with partnering with those filmmakers that we know and we have good relationships with.
So just piggybacking off of that, because last week I my first interview was with a local filmmaker in the Charlotte area, and I was asking him, like, what is, like, what is one of the biggest challenges in filmmaking, and he gave me and he gave me a lot of answers, but the biggest one that stuck out to me was just getting it financed, because as someone who actually went to school and got a degree in filmmaking,
Right.
they focus so much on the technical aspect, but when you get out, you have no idea of how to handle the the business side of it, and business is a huge part of it. Do you and I know you mentioned that there are a lot of steps to this, but I want to ask: do you think that there would be any programs or seminars or anything in the future that would kind of teach these young filmmakers not only how to develop their craft, but how to navigate the business aspect of it? Because that can be very, very intimidating, especially if you're going cap in hand to ask an investor, hey, I'm asking you to put a lot of faith in my product so you can finance this project and I can create something that I've always wanted to create.
Yeah, I think that, from our vantage point, we have seen filmmakers that obviously I would say it's probably about 3 or 4 we have a relationship with that will circulate a GoFundMe. And so kind of we have awareness that that's kind of, sometimes with the film, if you're more of a veteran, you kind of already know this is, I'm picturing, like, 4 different settings, locations, I should say, whatever scene. So you have a good idea of what it would cost. So if you do a GoFundMe or you start raising money, but what you're saying about kind of starting from the beginning, hey, I have this film, what is it going to take? Because you don't want to start it and then have to abandon it midway.
Right.
I personally, I obviously have a regular full-time job for the government. So this is a passion that's on the side. And I think I sometimes think about the business side, but not something that I've really considered when it comes to young filmmakers and how they get their films made, that there's so many different aspects to it. And so I
Yeah.
think that's a good point about, if we were to do something, if we're going to start cultivating young filmmakers, then we have to consider that as well. And so I think that's kind of like, if you do a seminar or you do a panel, right? Let's say you do a panel, you might want to think about doing them on multiple topics, like not just kind of the filmmaking aspect and, how to, you know, get the most, I don't know how else to say, bang for your buck, or how to get the most out of a film,
Right.
budget wise, and I think that's something I've never really considered. I know, that filmmakers often they're raising money now, and we've seen kind of a shift since the pandemic, but honestly, I think this was happening kind of before the pandemic, because you saw it in the movie industry, so it's kind of trickling down. Like the first time I saw a straight to video, I guess, film that showed up on Hulu or Netflix, and I thought to myself, this was never in theaters. Where did this film come from? And it never got picked up. And that there were so many films that just don't have distribution, and how that then trickles down. And then how do you get your movie, besides getting it made, how do you get it shown? And so, like, I think it's interesting, we're seeing like an uptick in submissions this year, versus last year. And we're like, okay, we're out of the pandemic, but now we're wondering about, the strike, and then filmmaking, where is it going? I think we're kind of wondering, because, and I'm sure you've seen, I'm sure you're not, oblivious to this. Like, when you think about what was at the theater now versus 20 years ago, we're talking a legit, like, a big difference.
Right.
What
Yeah.
gets made. So, yeah. And so I think that, I'm really, I don't know. Like, it's not, to me, the outlook isn't as positive as I'd like. And I'm really curious to see how the strike turns out. And, film studios taking chances on films that they did 20 years ago and now they don't. It's just, I don't know.
Yeah, it's become and it's funny too, because earlier we did a review of Secret Invasion. You know, that miniseries.
Disney, yeah, on Disney.
Yeah, and we just trashed the absolute hell out of it, because we found the quality of it, subpar, and the fact that everything about it, from the technical aspect to the writing aspect, was just abhorrent. And to your point, what I find really, really disturbing is the fact that you have a lot of good filmmakers out there, a lot of local indie filmmakers who genuinely care about a structured narrative that goes somewhere, who cares about character developments, but they're being locked out of the system because it's not something that generates money. And I applaud film festivals such as yours, because you're at least giving these filmmakers a chance to have their work exhibited. You know, um, I but I do want to circle back, because you said that you were building a relationship with these veteran, I guess, recurring guests, in your film festival. Are there any other steps to getting to where you need to be in cultivating young talent in the area?
I think for us, so here's the thing, if I'm being frank, the pandemic really affected a lot of our volunteers. I would say before the pandemic, at that time, we were probably 9 to 10 people strong. And so, just to kind of quickly kind of break down, like, the structure, when you have like an executive committee and, a board or whatever, you have the chair, right? You have the vice chair, you have like a communications person, and they're responsible for some of the, content we might create for social media. You have a social media person, you have a sponsorship person, right? That's mainly their job, a volunteer coordinator, someone in charge of programming, judging, submissions, right? And you have a PR person. And usually, if you're lucky, the PR person you have does this in their normal job, right? And
Right.
yeah, I mean, that ideally, that's what you have. And at that time, so I'm talking a year before the pandemic, we were able to get interns for a project we were doing to raise money for Spring to Action. I'm not sure if you're familiar, but this is a local kind of charity network in Alexandria where different businesses, nonprofits raise money for their business, right?
Right.
For nonprofit, right? And so we did this big campaign with the students from George Mason. They did a really, really good job. So that's kind of how we were set up, I would say, prior to the pandemic. Now, once the pandemic hit, we were put on online. So we did Eventbrite exclusively. We were completely online. The award ceremony was online. That was the best way to do it, we thought. And then next year, the following year, we did the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then that next year, we said, okay, let's do in person. And we usually start out, and this is where outreach kind of plays a role. You kind of do outreach and you want to be able to recruit people, right, to volunteer. But we are now kind of less than half that. Our committee kind of is between 4 and 6 people right now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that's where we're kind of, we have a deficit in manpower to do what we want to do. And so these are ideas that we kind of table, we put in the Google Drive, and then we kind of revive it when we're able to.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And so that's kind of where we are. Yeah.
So, and I don't mean to come off like this also, but isn't capital, like financial capital, another thing that you kind of need?
You do.
In this kind of thing? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, because so sponsorship wise, so I would say so let's say like if I break down like what it costs to put on the festival, we're talking like right now we screen at an AMC theater. AMC Hoffman, so that cost isn't cheap. It's not bad though, especially we actually are able to, I think, as long as, there's no issue with big film releases that weekend, which is, ours is Veterans Day weekend. As long as there's no issue with film releases, we're able to get like 2 theaters together. And so, we've been able to negotiate that price, but we keep it under 10,000 generally. Right. But we have to, pay for other things that we need to run the festival. So it's under, I would say it's under 30,000. But, in terms of what we bring in, we want to at least break even. And so that's kind of where the sponsorships come in. And so it has to be like an effort for everyone and not just a target person that does big ticket. So, we use Spring to Action, talk to your friends, then you can get kind of lower level donations, but you can get, 200 here, 100 here, 550 here, or, 5,000 and on down for sponsorship. So I think for us, we haven't broke through with a big ticket consistent sponsor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But we've done okay. We're not in financial trouble. We pretty much break even.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously you would like to get to that next level where you are getting, more sponsors or major sponsors for your events, right?
I think so. And it's not just, so we could do more like, for example, so this year kind of the plan is to have, okay, so we're Veterans Weekend, right? So the plan is to have Thursday we have a filmmaker reception. It's kind of like we used to do like a happy hour, then a dinner. Now we have, you're familiar with Old Town Alexandria, at least.
Yeah, I'm familiar with it. Yeah.
Yeah. So Old Town, everybody likes how cute it is with the kind of colonial style, right? Architecture. So, what's really good about the city is there are some things like if you're a nonprofit, you can get some venues free, right? So we can take advantage. So, there's a venue we've been using to hold the filmmakers reception so they can all kind of get to know each other and they can mingle. We bring our sponsors. And so these are ways we can say, hey, you're visible, we're promoting you, filmmaker, sponsor, whatever. And in the past, we've also done like an opening night film on that Thursday. We're not doing that this year. We don't have the bandwidth. But that was an idea, right? Like a kickoff film, so to speak. So I think right now what we're thinking is we'll have the filmmaker reception Friday. We'll have Beatley Library, which is kind of a local library, but they have a really, really nice kind of theater room, so to speak, is where we show the like documentaries for free, right? Something more community focused where people can just come in and watch good films. And then we have the theater films that Saturday and Sunday.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and then the award ceremony.
So I'm looking on the calendar right now. So you're supposed to run from the 9th to 11th. Is that correct?
To the 12th.
The 12th. Okay, gotcha. I was missing a day right there. So I what I also want to touch on real quickly too, because like I said, I'm really, really fascinated by not only your film festival, but also, the film scene in general in your neck of the woods. I want to know, are there any resources or networks or connections that local filmmakers have in trying to get their films made, or any advice or mentorships that they can access?
I know that we sponsored an event about 4 or 5 years ago with the 48-hour project.
Okay.
And I was surprised with the turnout and networking going on. And that, I think, is probably where we started thinking in terms of we need to do this more often kind of thing, right? Because that kind of networking, what you're talking about, is something that other filmmakers have talked to us about that's lacking in Alexandria specifically.
Really?
Right.
I did not. Oh, wow. I did not
Small
think that.
scale. Yeah, because it's smaller scale. Yeah, the networking. So I think that we can fill, obviously, I think we can fill that void. So I think that's something that, we've kind of identified something where we can, kind of bring that community more together, I think. And, people like to hear from filmmakers. If you go to a film festival, you kind of want to hear, you have the Q&A, right? You always have the Q&A. And so for us, I think that's helpful. We always want, like, if you're going to have a film festival, I think you want to opt towards having filmmakers present versus not present, of course, right?
Yeah.
And, if you accepted their film, it's because you like something about the film. So you'd like for them to talk about it, right? And so you want the audience to be like kind of immersed in some sense, right? And so they have that access. And I think if you can offer that, I think that's a plus.
Gotcha. But obviously there's always room to grow, right? Because
there is. I think that, like I mentioned, like if I was doing an ideal film festival schedule, right, we would have, for example, a filmmaker reception, a kickoff night, right? So you have a film that we're featuring that we love, which mind you, we've done that in the past, but not every year.
Mm.
And we're like, this is the film, right? And we have an opening night carpet thing, everything, right? At a location, but also, Friday, like I said, we're screening at Beatley, but we'd also have panels. We would have a few panels because we've been talking about it so much and we don't know. We've talked kind of within the committee, okay, if we did something else where we kind of served the filmmaking community, what would that look like? Well, so one of the things we talked about was, of course, the screenwriting competition I mentioned, but panels on filmmaking. Well, what does that look like? And so I think that's where that kind of fits in. So you get so we can kind of offer more and kind of bring in more people with an interest, kind of. Well, the film festival is having this, and so we could bring in people from DC and Maryland, that would really be interested in listening to things like that, because you don't have it as much. I mean, you might have it in DC, but I think offering that is, I think, a plus and kind of shows our commitment to the community and cultivating filmmaking.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Obviously that's, so doing that, I think, is very important to us as a film festival. And so that's something that, again, that's the bucket, that's on our bucket list, but we're still kind of recovering manpower wise from the pandemic. And so, hopefully that's something in our near future.
Gotcha. Well, I do want to be respectful of your time, but before we wrap up, where can how can people reach out to you or learn more about the festival? Like, what can they do?
So we are on Twitter and Instagram, but our website is alexfilmfest.com. Like I said, I'm the chair of the festival. This is my second year as chair. And, I think that we're actually really excited. Right now we're doing programming, kind of, that's the stage we're in kind of right now. And so we've started to do kind of more partnerships kind of in the community of Alexandria, which I think is something that, doesn't take as much bandwidth, and it's something that you can easily do. You can partner with an organization, you can support their events, and they can support yours. So that's kind of where we are in terms of outreach. So, hopefully, in the next couple years, you'll be like, oh yeah, okay, I'm hearing about the Alexandria Film Festival all the time now, right? Like, they're doing amazing things. So that's kind of, that's our goal, I think.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, if you can send me the links, I'll put them down in the description below. In the note descriptions, just so people can reach out to you. Because, like I said, I think you guys have a lot of promise. I genuinely love what you're doing, and the fact that you're a small time film festival, yet you're punching above your weight is, for me, just phenomenal.
Yeah.
So I definitely think that's amazing.
Well, I appreciate
yeah. So before we wrap up, I just have to ask, what movie or TV show are you watching at the moment that you want to gush about?
Oh, okay. I just finished Painkiller.
Okay, what's that about? I haven't actually heard about that.
So Painkiller, is it called Painkiller? So Painkiller is about the Sackler family, right? This is OxyContin. So this isn't the first series or film we've gotten about this subject matter, but it's based on, I think, a New Yorker article by Patrick, what's his name? Radden Calf, I forget his name, but he wrote a book called Empire of Pain about the Sackler family, right? And so this is kind of based on his article, but then he expands on it in a book. But I was actually I thought I was just going to watch one episode and be done. This was yesterday, right after I finished work, and I really enjoyed the way the story was told, right? Kind of a lot of flashbacks. And then they didn't focus on, they did about 4 different character perspectives, right? People kind of that had, a certain vantage point, right? So you have the pharmaceutical manager, the marketing managers, right? And what they were doing, which I had heard, they were trying to, you got a bonus if you got the doctor to up the milligram amount, right? If they kept it at 300, but you got a lot of them, you wouldn't get a bonus. But if you got them to up it to 800, then you did. But right, it's on Netflix. So they did a really good job talking about kind of what happened with that court case. And they talk about every literal bad thing they did and why and how they were able to get it to so many people. It's so disturbing, but good. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Like I said, I just finished it yesterday. It's called Painkiller. Matthew Broderick plays Dr. Richard Sackler. Who else is in there? A few other people. Taylor Kish, I think, from Friday Night Lights. He plays like the guy that gets addicted, essentially, right? So they go through his injury, right? So it was a back injury, and then he starts off, but the way they develop it, like it doesn't happen overnight, but the way that it's done is so, I don't know how to explain how understandable it is. There's such empathy with his character because you see him fighting it. Once he's hooked, and you can tell he's hooked.
Yeah.
And he goes through detox a couple times and still go. It terrifies me because I'm thinking about how powerful this drug must be, and how did we even get to where it was so widely, available. But
yeah, I mean, especially right now with the whole fentanyl crisis. I mean, this is it's pretty terrifying.
It's very terrifying, and they just did such a good job showing how it happened. Like I've read stuff. Maybe I actually have Empire of Parents. I haven't read it yet, but how did this happen? They can clearly lay it out, and it's fascinating and terrifying. So
excellent.
I would recommend it. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, Dara, I do want to thank you so much for taking the time to come on our podcast. I do want you to come back for future episodes, and I would definitely love to hear how the Alexandria Film Festival is developing, because in spite of hearing stories about other film festivals caving in, I really, really want this film festival to succeed. So, and I'm more than happy to share this podcast interview. And if you could also share this podcast with all of your friends and associates too, get the word out, because we will help each other out.
We will be promoting this. Don't you worry. Don't you worry.
Excellent. And for those of y'all watching, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to watch this episode. Remember to hit the like and comment, subscribe button, and also let us know in the comments who do you think we should have on the show. But for the Movie Pope podcast, I'm Lucas Suwan, and thank you so much for watching. Take it easy. Ciao.